Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and today I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet the Big Checked Crochet Hat, which is a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com. Please go to the link in the description where you'll find both the written pattern and links to all the supplies you need. Or you can go to your favorite search engine and simply type in Mooglyblog Big Checked Crochet Hat, and it should pop right up. To make this teen to adult size hat, I used a USL 8mm crochet hook and up to 150 yards of Caron Colorama Halo Perfect Phasing. I used Vanilla Frost, Beeswax Frost, and Nutmeg Frost as my colorways, but of course you should pick 3 beautiful colors that you would enjoy. As I mentioned, this hat is sized to fit most teens to adults with a 22-inch to 24-inch head circumference. You can also add a pom-pom, but it's completely optional. And the instructions also include an option for a ponytail style hat. Let's go ahead and get started with our Big Checked Crochet Hat. Okay, first let's take a quick look at our finished Big Checked Crochet Hat. There is a pom-pom here, but it's completely optional, of course. You don't have to add the pom-pom if you don't want to, and there are instructions in the written pattern on how to turn it into a pony style hat. Or a ponytail style hat, I should say. This hat is actually worked side to side. If you made the Big Checked Crochet Scarf or looked at that pattern before, or its tutorial, you know that we work back and forth with 3 sections for the scarf, and for the hat, we're doing just 2. If you look closely here, you can see our stitches actually run this way. So we crocheted the hat from this direction in rows all along until we got to the end, seamed them up to the top, added a couple rounds to close up the top. This is where you can turn it into a ponytail style hat if desired. And then finally, we came back and added this really lovely, super stretchy brim. So this is a really fun way to continue to use up the yarn left over from the Big Checked Crochet Scarf. Or of course, you can make the hat all on its own. Let's get started. Now here you can see I've got my 3 colors of yarn all laid out in front of me, just like they were when I made the scarf. Color A, I'm pulling from the outside, so it's got its label removed. Then I've got colors B and C ready and waiting to go. We're going to begin with color A. These are obviously not the same colors I used when I made the original hat. Just like me, you should pick the colors that you love best. So let's go ahead and start stripe 1 to begin our hat, row 1 with color A. We're going to begin with a row of foundation double crochets. If you would prefer to avoid using the foundation double crochet, there are alternative instructions in the written pattern. To begin my foundation double crochet, I start with a slip knot and then chain 2. This chain 2 will not count as a stitch. To make the first foundation double crochet, I yarn over. I insert my hook on the underneath hump of the first chain made, the one right next to the slip knot, yarn over and pull up a loop. And now we have our active loop, our yarn over, and this loop I just pulled up. This loop I just pulled up will become the chain at the bottom of our first stitch. So I yarn over and pull through just that loop, and then yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2 to finish my double crochet. So this is our first foundation double crochet. To make the rest of the foundation double crochets, I yarn over and then insert my hook under the 2 loops at the bottom of the previous stitch. Yarn over again, pull up a loop. Now we've got the chain at the bottom of our second stitch. Yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, and pull through 2. Let's make another one. Yarn over, insert our hook under the 2 loops at the bottom of the first stitch, yarn over and pull up our loop, yarn over and pull through 1, yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. So there we now have 3 foundation double crochets. With color A for a full-size hat, we make 9, and then we switch over to color B to continue our row. I'm not going to make a full-sized hat, so let's go ahead and make one more stitch in color A, and then we'll switch to color B just for our little demonstration piece right here. So I'm changing the numbers a little bit. You should absolutely follow the numbers in the written pattern. To make our switching stitch, if you will, here, our last stitch in color A, I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook under the 2 loops at the bottom of the previous stitch, yarn over and pull up my loop, yarn over and pull through 1, yarn over and pull through 2, But now I'm going to stop with 2 loops left on the hook. Find the end here of my color B. There we are. Right there. I'm just going to lay that right over my hook, leaving enough tail there to weave in, and pull this new color through those last 2 loops. Now I can work with this new color, and I'm going to leave the tail end attached to the skein of color A just hanging right there. I'm not going to try and work over it or anything. I want it to be there when I come back to pick up for row 2. So to continue row 1 with color B, we yarn over, go under the 2 loops at the bottom of the previous stitch, just like we did before. Just push those ends right on out of the way there. Yarn over and pull up our loop. Yarn over and pull through 1. Get our yarn untangled a little bit there. Yarn over and pull through 2. And yarn over and pull through 2. As you do this, you might find that this loop tries to pull up quite big. If it does that, we can just pull down on that tail to tighten it right back up to the size of the other stitches. And then when we go to weave this in, of course, that will secure the top of this stitch as well. So then we simply continue this row with color B. With our instructions color A, we should have made 9 foundation double crochets. With color B, we make 8 foundation double crochets, followed by a foundation single crochet. So let's make, we did 4 in this, let's make a couple more here. Foundation double crochets, yarn over, go into the bottom of the previous stitch, pull through 1, then pull through 2, and pull through 2. Let's do another one. Go right into the bottom of that previous stitch. If you'd like to see this done on a less fuzzy yarn, I do have a separate tutorial for it on the YouTube channel. There we are. So now let's pretend we've made 8 of those, and now we're ready for our foundation single crochet. Foundation single crochet is very similar. We just don't have to yarn over first, just like our difference between a double crochet and a single crochet, right? We've got our active loop. We go straight down into the bottom of the previous stitch there under those 2 loops. Yarn over and pull up our loop. Now we've got our active loop and the chain at the bottom of this stitch. So we yarn over and pull loop up through that chain, and then yarn over and pull through 2 to finish. So each row of this hat, while we're making the main body of the hat until we do the seaming and the brim and all that, all these rows will have 18 total stitches. 17 of them will be double crochet, and at one end, it's always going to be single crochets. These single crochets will be at the top end of our hat, so this is a way we start gathering in the top, even though we're working side to side here in rows. So that is what it should look like, a little wider, of course, but that is the basics of what it should look like at the end of row 1, stripe 1. All right, now let's begin stripe 1, row 2. I'm going to start with a chain 1, then I need to turn to work back the other direction, and we're going to put a single crochet right in the top of that single crochet. Then we simply double crochet until we get to that color change. 1 stitch in each stitch. We're not increasing or decreasing here. So now when I get to where my color change is, we stop with 2 loops left on the hook, drop that color so we can come back and pick it up. That little tail end out of the way, we'll use that later. And now we can pick up that end there of what would be color A, finish that stitch, and continue on. One thing I talked about a little bit in the scarf is that when I do this color switch, I like to sort of pick up that yarn that I've pulled up to complete that stitch on my hook as well, and just sort of enclose it in that first stitch of the new color. I find it gives me a really nice clean color change right there. Same thing if you find this loop pulling up too much, you can give that a little tug, and then just continue on across your row. And of course, for the rest of this row, it's just double crochets. So that's really easy, like I say, to sort of read your work for this one. Double crochets in your double crochets, single crochets in your single crochets. So here is a much smaller version of what your hat should look like after stripe 1, row 2. Now we're ready to begin row 3. I'm going to start by turning to work back the other direction, and because we're starting at our double crochet end, I'm going to start with a chainless starting double crochet. This is what you can use, or you can use your favorite double crochet substitute, or even a chain 3 if you prefer. Again, I do have a separate tutorial on this without such fuzzy yarn if preferred. I'm going to pull this loop up to the height of a double crochet and secure the top of that loop with my finger on my hook. Then I will yarn over with that loop, insert my hook right in the top of that very first stitch, yarn over again, and pull up a loop. Then I will yarn over and pull through that loop and behind our yarn over. Then I can drop that finger from the top of the hook finally, yarn over, and pull through those last 2 loops. Again, you can use whichever double crochet substitute you prefer. Then we simply double crochet in each double crochet stitch until we get to that color change again. These are just standard double crochets worked under both of those top loops. So now we know this is our color change one, so we stop with 2 loops left on our hook, drop that color to behind again, and just pick up this one. Now you might notice they start to get twisted a little bit. You can just take your time as you go and untwist your yarns. We're only using for the hat 2 at a time, so that does make it a little bit easier than the scarf. We finished that stitch, so now we yarn over, grab that strand, go into that first stitch of this color, and just go ahead and finish our double crochet. Now we know we started this row with a double crochet, so that means we need to remember when we get to the end of this row, we will finish with a single crochet for that very last stitch. So we've come to that last stitch, and we want to make sure to put a single crochet right in there. So this is what it should look like. Again, longer, but this is basically what it should look like at the end of stripe 1, row 3. Stripe 1, rows 4 and 5 are just repeats of rows 2 and 3. We start with a single crochet end. That means we start with a single crochet and double crochet across. When you start at the double crochet end, you start with a double crochet and make sure to end with a single crochet. Row 6 is another repeat, but it ends a little bit differently. So let's do that one together. Row 6 starts with a chain 1 and a single crochet in the first stitch. And then, of course, we work our standard double crochets across here until we get to the end. There will be, just like the scarf, 6 rows in each stripe, if you will, each set of colors. When we get to that color change, we just drop that yarn right there. You can see our A color, color A, is just there waiting for us. So we can grab that, make our switch, and continue to double crochet our way across here until we get to that very last stitch. Oh, need just a little bit more yarn here, pulled up from that outside end skein. There we go. And now we have put our last stitch there in row 6. Now what I'm going to do is we are going to break color B and finish off that end. You remember color B? Here is our orange end, our orange color right now. So I'm going to carefully just put that down and grab my scissors and grab color B. I am going to go ahead and break that yarn here with my scissors, cut the yarn, leaving enough of an end to weave in later. And I can sort of set that end away for now. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and get ready for stripe 2. So for stripe 2, we're going to be working with color A and color C. So we'll need to stop for a moment and pull up just a little bit of that color. There we go. Now we're going to, of course, turn to work back the other direction, but now we want to be working with color C, working over color A so that we can move it over to be above this section. Sounds like a lot, but let's do it together. One thing we need to do, if we're going to do this next row here with color C, we need to pull back the top of that last stitch we made in color A so that we've got 2 loops on our hook. And then I'm going to, just like I did before, grab my next color here, lay it over my hook, and pull through to finish that stitch. Pull down on those ends, get it sort of situated the way you like. And this is probably the trickiest part, doing the chainless starting double crochet with this end sort of loose and with this yarn. So if you are having trouble with it, again, you can use whichever double crochet substitute you like, but here's how I like to do it. I keep a firm grip on this end so I don't pull up on that end, but rather pull up from the end attached to the skein. Turn. I'm going to secure that top and yarn over just like I normally would. Oops, try that again. Secure that top and yarn over. Go into that first stitch. Now I'm going to keep that end on top of my hook, but I also need to make sure to grab that color A end. Then attached to the skein, that is, not the end attached, or not attached to a skein, I should say, not the hanging end. We want the working yarn both on top of the hook there. So then we can yarn over and pull that loop up and through. There we go. Yarn over again, pull through that loop and behind our yarn over, and then yarn over and pull through those last 2 loops. As I say, that's a little wobbly and tricky, so if you would prefer just a chain 3 there, you absolutely can. Now I worked over our pink end here, our color C end. It just helps secure it. From now on, I'm going to let that hang. And when I weave this in, I will definitely weave it into some other pink stitches. However, as I crochet across here for stripe 2, row 1, I want to make sure that as I'm working over this color A block, I enclose or basically encase this color A strand at the bottom of each of these stitches so that it moves over to this next section. So let's do those next few stitches together. I yarn over, go into the next stitch, make sure again that that working yarn is on top of my hook. So it's just enclosed right in each one of these stitches. Okay, so we continue to enclose that same color there in each stitch until we get to that last one. You can see here's our color change again. I'm going to stop with 2 loops left of this color on my hook. And now I'm going to grab that color I've been working over, our color A, and finish the stitch with that color. Now I'm going to move on to this section, and I have moved this color over here. So I'm going to go ahead and just double crochet in each of these stitches. Now again, this is a row that ends in a single crochet, so I want to keep that in mind. I'm also going to take the time to work over this end of color B for a couple of stitches. I am a firm believer in weaving in your ends, not just crocheting over them, but I also firmly believe it's nice to tack them down as you go a little bit and sort of get some of that weaving pre-done. So with that tacked down, we've come to our last stitch of the row, so I know that that needs to be a single crochet. And of course, then we work back and forth in the same rows that we did for stripe 1 until we get to the end where we'll have row 6 of stripe 2. So now let's pretend we're at row 6 for stripe 2, because as I say, it's just working back and forth with those double crochets, keeping all your single crochets at one end. And as you work, you'll be able to easily see which one that is, because you can see it's a lot shorter on this side than it is on the double crochet side. So for row 6 of stripe 2, we of course chain 1, single crochet in that first stitch, and then double crochet across till we get to our color changes. When we get to that color changing stitch, of course, then we drop that color and pick up our working yarn, our next color, finish the stitch with that. Make sure you grab that end and go ahead and stitch on across to the end of this row. Pull up a little bit more of that color C there. All right, so when we get to the last double crochet for stripe 2, row 6, then we look at it and we see that we now need to break color A. So color A was this color right here. It's the first one we started with. We've done 2 blocks in that. That's another good clue. It is time to go ahead and break that one. Then we're ready to get set up for stripe 3. Once again, we're going to want to pull out that last little bit of that final stitch so that we can finish this last stitch with our next color. So for stripe 3, we are bringing back in, what did we have separate, of course? What did we cut first? Color B. It's time for color B to make its return. So now we would finish off this stitch with color B, like so. And then we do the exact same thing that we did when we were getting started with stripe 2. We need to turn, get a double crochet in there, however it's easiest for you. I like to pull up on that loop, go right in that first stitch. Make sure both of those ends are on top of my hook as I yarn over and pull up my loop, and then finish that first double crochet. And then as I continue across again, I just want to make sure and go ahead and drop that orange end, the color B end, but I want to work over that same color end so that I can move it over, shift it over to that next section. So it's really easy to forget to make sure to keep that on top of your hook. If you miss it, the best solution is unfortunately just to pull back and go get it. But we bring it over to where we need it, and then we have it. We can drop that color, switch to the color we were just working over, and then finish up our row. Again, just double crochet in each stitch. When I get to that second stitch, I like to crochet over that tail end a little bit, just to tack it down. And then of course, when we get to the end of a row that started with double crochet, we know we need to end with a single crochet in that very last stitch. So this is really how we make the main portion of the hat. We work back and forth in rows. After every 6 rows, we switch colors. And you can see a little bit here how that pattern ends up working out here. We've got these two the same, these two the same. Now we're going to have 2 yellows, then there'll be another 2 blues, 2 pinks, sort of working diagonally around the hat. If we go back to the original, by the time we got to the ends of this yarn, these two were really close, so it's a little harder to see. But you can see here, this is the direction we were working. Let me get straightened out here. So we have our 2 yellows, our 2 light browns, our 2 dark browns, etc. We just keep going all the way around till we get to that last section where we have these 2 colors right here. After we work across, then we are going to break our yarn and we seam up this first section of stripes to our, or what rather be our last section of stripes to our first section of stripes. So let me demonstrate how that seaming comes together. So after you've made all 6 stripes, you can break and weave in all your ends except for the yarn that you finished crocheting with. You can see here I've finished on a double crochet stitch, and now I'm ready to seam up my side. So what I want to do is I want to work across the top of the row I just finished, of course, the last row of stripe 6, but I'm going to be connecting to the very bottom of the very first row we made. And this is another point where working with foundation double crochet comes in really handy, because at the bottom of each of those stitches, we have a little V, just like we would have at the top of a stitch. So now what we're going to do is we are going to be back loop only, slip stitching through each pair of stitches. So what does that look like? Let's get it set up here. So we want to, and you can take your time if you want to and match these up with stitch markers if you want to in pairs, but with only, 18 stitches in each row, it should be relatively easy. We can go ahead and start here right on the very first stitch. I'm going to grab row 1 here and hold it right nearby. I'm going to go under the back loop only. So this is the loop that's furthest away on that stitch. And then this is a little strange because we've got a curve happening here. Looking at the tops of these stitches, generally we would say, of course, these are our front loops and these are our back loops, but this is a 3D object. You can see right here. So we're going to kind of count these 2 inside loops, if you will, as the back loops. So it'd be the back loop of this one. Looking at it from this direction, it would really officially be the front loop, but they're kind of like the back loops because we're making a hat. It's kind of a strange way to think about it, but let's continue and see where we go. All right, so let's go ahead and demo that so we can see it a little easier. I'm going to start by inserting my hook right under that loop. Find the first stitch there at the bottom of row 1. And now I'm going to come again, sort of from the outside to the inside of the hat through just that loop. However, and I always do this, before I do that, I need to make sure that my yarn is sort of on the inside of my hat there. There we go. Let me drop that out of the way. Get my hook right under that back loop. And I can grab my yarn and just pull through all of those loops, like so. First one's always super tricky. Let's do a couple more. They get a lot easier as you go. So we're going to insert our hook under that loop only. Find that same loop on the other side. We want to come from sort of the middle of the stitch there. Again, make sure that end is hanging out in there. There we go. Then we can grab our yarn over, and pull through all 3 of those loops. Like I said, super awkward as you begin, gets a lot easier once you get going. Pick up the inside loop of that stitch, drop that yarn, my biggest bad habit there, grab the inside loop of the next stitch, yarn over, and pull through all 3. And then we just continue doing that all the way up the row. For this one, we do not need to switch colors. We're just going to work with the same color. Oh, I always do that. I hold that yarn and it gets right in my way. For this one, we don't need to switch colors at all. We're going to stick with the same color for all of our seaming stitches. You can see here, if I'm having trouble getting that loop, I just use the hook of my hook, if you will, to grab it there, and then yarn over and pull through all 3. So if I pull up on that loop here a little bit, you can see how this actually creates a really nice seam right up the side of our hat. It just takes a little extra time. Let's do one more here together. There we go. There we are. And it's getting easier and easier with each set of stitches. So just take your time, and I'll see you when we get to the top of the hat. Okay, so here I have seamed all the way up the side, and we can see that a little easier here on the finished full-size hat. I just worked through those back loops only and slip stitched all the way up through that single crochet stitch, and then we can finish up the top of our hat right here. This is where we have the opportunity to turn it into a ponytail hat if desired. Now here on our little demo hat, the top opening is pretty small, but of course on the full-size hat it's quite a bit bigger, so we do a couple of rows that gather it in towards the top, and then finally we cut our tail and cinch it closed, unless of course we're turning it into a ponytail hat. Regardless, row 1 here is the same for ponytail or non-ponytail style. We are going to work around the top of the hat, which is the sides of these single crochet rows right here. This is going to be our first round, if you will, for the hat. So to begin, we chain 1, and we're going to single crochet 2 together all the way around. So that means, since these are single crochets here, we're going to work 1 leg of each stitch into the side of each row. So that means if you've got 6 rows of each color, you'll have 3 single crochet 2s together on each block. So basically here in our little sample, we've just got 2 rows, you can see, of our pink. So I can see I need to go into the side of the first row and pick up a loop, and then into the side of the second row and pick up a loop. Yarn over and pull through 2. There's our first single crochet 2 together. I want to continue doing that all the way around, making sure to pick up 1 stitch or 1 loop from the side of each row. If we had a total, we have 6 rows in each section, 6 stripes total, that's 36 rows. We will come down to 18 single crochet 2 togethers. So if we come back to the finished hat, you can see right there is our round of single crochet 2s togethers. Now, if you wish to make this into a ponytail style hat, that's so hard for me to say. If you like to use that style, then for round 2 here, as you're closing it up, you'd simply want to crochet over a ponytail holder, like an elastic band, the kind designed for hair ideally, in each stitch around. You'd still want to keep those 18 stitches, just crochet right on over that hairband, and that will give you a little bit of stretch at the top of the hat as well, and hold that together really nicely. The hairband is optional, but I like to put them at the top of my ponytail hats. If you are not making the pony style hat, if you are making the regular hat, as seen here, a closed beanie, then we do a second round of single crochet 2 togethers. So if we had 36 rows in our finished hat, round 1 took it down to 18 stitches because of single crochet 2 togethers. The next round of single crochet 2 togethers brings it down to 9 stitches. And then we just cut our long tail and use that tail to gather those 9 stitches closed and weave in our end. I do have a separate tutorial for that linked in the pattern and in this tutorial on the blog. The final part of our big checked crochet hat is to add the brim. You can see right here. This uses a little bit of post stitches and creates a really lovely stretchy look. You can see it's a little smoother on the inside, so it's really nice feeling against the forehead, but has that great look and stretch. So what we're going to be doing is joining right to that first stitch right by our seam. So let's set that one aside and pull back up our little sample. Now you can use whichever color you'd like to use for your brim, just depending on where you're at in each skein, whatever color you'd like to have next to your face. I used color A, so let's go ahead and continue that right here. I'll pull up a little bit more because this is the one where I pulled from the outside. So what I'm going to do now, you can see here's my first original tail. I haven't woven that one in yet. I'm just going to tuck it out of the way. Is I am going to take whatever color I want to use for the brim, and I am going to work a standing single crochet in the side of this first row right here. So the way I like to do that, and again, I have a separate tutorial if you'd prefer on the channel, is I'm just going to put my loop on my hook, or if you prefer, you can use a slip knot. Go right into the side of that first stitch. Now, On this side of the hat, at the brim end, these are all double crochets. So that means we can plan on working 2 stitches in the side of each of these rows. So I'm staying sort of to the one side of it here and putting in a single crochet like so. Then I'm going to single crochet again in the side of that row. Wherever you like to put your stitches, if you like to split the stitches, if you like to go around the whole stitch, if you like to go into where the stitches worked, totally up to you. There we are. So we have 2 single crochets in the side of row 1. And then we're simply going to single crochet once in the side of the next 2 rows. We talked about with double crochets, we normally plan on working 2 stitches in the side of each row. With this pattern, we're doing a little bit of reduction. We're doing a little bit of reducing our stitches, decreasing, if you will, without using decrease stitches. We're just going to come to the side of this row and put 1 stitch in there, 1 single crochet, and then go right to the side of the next row and put a single crochet right in there. There we are. Then as we come back to our pattern, that is our repeat. We put 2 single crochets in the side of the next row. Of course, we've got quite a bit fewer rows here on our little demo hat. And then 1 single crochet in the side of each of the next 2 rows. So some of these will feel like big stretches, but it's all going to work out. You can see on the finished hat just how pretty that did turn out. Let's see, it looks like I've got not quite enough rows here in our little demo to do that repeat again. Of course, in the original, we've got 36 rows. On our little demo here, we have quite a few less. But we'll say I put 2 stitches in the side of that row and then 1 in the side of each of the next 2 rows. Now on our little demo, I'm 1 row short to be able to pull that off, but we can use our imagination. This brings us right back here to where our seam is though. And I wanted to do something a little extra here on this first row to make that seam look really nice on our finished hat. So what I did when I got to this point, before just joining right to that one and having sort of a little bump from our seam, what I did was I found that first slip stitch along the side here. And this might be a little tricky for you to find, especially in that fuzzy yarn. Just do your best there. Find the 2 loops of that first slip stitch. It's actually a little easier here to see in this color, right there. And we're just going to slip our hook right underneath those 2 loops and then come on over here and find that first stitch. And then when we make our slip stitch join, we just pull through there, pull right underneath that loop, and pull right through that loop as well. You can see that just gives it a much more, I think, finished and polished look. Really pulls that seam out nice and straight, and it avoids any strange bump right there. So that is how you work round 1 for adding the brim. At the end of this round, you should have a total of 48 single crochets. Now we're ready for round 2 of adding the brim. We're going to start again with that chainless starting double crochet where we pull it up nice and tall, yarn over the loop, and go right into that first stitch. Now, again, you can use whatever double crochet substitute if you prefer. The rest of round 2 is quite simple. Double crochet in each stitch around. We had 48 single crochets here in round 1 of our brim, and we're going to maintain that stitch count of 48 for all the rounds of the brim. So simply double crochet all the way around, join at the end, and I'll see you for round 3. Okay, so this is what it should look like at the end of round 2 of adding the brim. Rounds 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the brim are all exactly the same. The only difference is round 7, we break and seamless join at the end. So all of the next rounds really build up this brim. If you like a shorter brim, you don't have to add as many rounds. If you like a longer brim, if you like a longer, taller hat, go ahead and add as many as you'd like. Here's how all of these rounds are worked. We start with a chain 1 and single crochet in that first stitch. Then we work a foundation double crochet around the next stitch. Or excuse me, not a foundation double crochet, a front post double crochet. Begins with an F, but very different stitch. For this one, we yarn over. Now we're going to come from the front, which is what makes it a front post double crochet. We come from the front around the post of the next stitch, popping our hook up here on the other side. We want to take our working yarn, just wrap it across the front of that stitch so that we can yarn over and pull our loop up and through behind that stitch. Now we've got 3 loops on our hook. We can yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. So it's a post stitch because we work it around the post instead of under those top 2 loops. So that is our repeat that takes us all the way around. Find the next stitch, work a single crochet right in the top. Now we want to make sure we don't work into the top of the stitch that we worked the post stitch around. That would cause an increase, and we don't want to increase here. So we single crochet in one stitch, front post double crochet in the next. Yarn over, come from the front around the post of that stitch. Bring our yarn over, pull it up, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, and pull through 2. Let's do that repeat again one more time. Single crochet in the next stitch, front post double crochet in the next stitch. Yarn over, come from the front around that post, pull up our loop, yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. You can see on our finished hat again, several rows of these post stitches with single crochets in between creates this really lovely ribbed look. When you've gone through all 7 rows, or however many rows you'd like to make for your brim, then you can go ahead, finish off, join to that first stitch, and you will have made your own Big Checked Crochet Hat. And that's how to crochet the Big Checked Crochet Hat. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.